Black magic, go. Hello! All right, got you fixed. Sorry, I had added the mic to one of our display screens and not to the other, so I didn't have microphone on both screens. And that screen wasn't ready for you guys to see. So welcome back to this week number 6, 7, I don't know, I lost track. Anyway, this week we're going to go over some interesting things with Solar Assistant and Home Assistant, and I'm just going to take a random trip through the Solar Assistant and Home Assistant and basically just kind of show you guys what I've got, what it involves, and things like that. Nothing super special other than trying to see if I can get it pulled up here. The couple of items I do want to cover before we get started. We got 6 people online. That's wonderful. Thank you guys for joining. I do want to talk a little bit about subscriber account. Again, has grown to well beyond where my highest expectations. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. It means so much to me. This week, I also have officially have launched. I've been doing a little bit of the consultations in the background, but this week the demand for it grew so much that I went ahead and launched it on my site. So if you're interested in a consultation of some kind, you've got something you want to set up or get my feedback on, please, in the link down below, you can get to that. Other than that, I encourage feedback. I would love to hear from all of you. Make sure that if you've got some feedback or something, please put it in the text. I think I've got all the chats working this week again, so that we can get to that and go from there. So unless I have someone gets into something else, I'm going to see if I can find my Home Assistant and my Solar Assistant application. I am going to be logging into a Solar Assistant and Home Assistant live on my RV from here in the studio this week. So everything that you see, there is no setups or anything. It's all live. It's all active. It's a real system. And feel free to ask any questions, and I'll be glad to show you what it is. I think if I go to Matt's, there we go. I'm going to get this launched, and then I'm going to pull up and switch my screen here for you guys. So here we have, and I do have some online questions that were sent from me. For those of you who are not aware, what I do is I take all of the emails and everything that I send and I collect them. And when I find large buckets of them, that's usually what I make shows about. I had a lot of questions about tools. That's why I made the tool one. I had a lot of questions about building a solar system, and that's why I did that. I've had a lot of questions about Home Assistant and Solar Assistant, and that is why I have built this particular, launched it this particular week, is because of that. So if you look at this screen here, you'll notice that Solar Assistant is very plain Jane. It has all the basic information that you would ever want to look at. It allows you to keep track of all the basic stats. As you can see from here, we've got PV coming in here. We've collected so far 21.3 kilowatts today. We've got the grid hooked up, and it's got 242.6 volts there. If you click on these items, it kind of shows you if you're pulling any power or anything. You can look around in them. I have my batteries connected open loop. I don't go closed loop. I did originally when I first bought my system. I went closed loop when I only had the 3 EG4 batteries. Since then, I've added a DIY battery. And when I added the DIY battery, I went open loop so I could actually monitor all of them. Now, Solar Assistant doesn't allow me to monitor all of the batteries. So that is where Home Assistant is going to come in a little later. And it's really based on a chain reaction. And I'm going to, just so I can explain this a little bit, I'm going to switch back to this screen. So it's based on a chain reaction of basically the 6000 XP being here. I got the wrong view up. The 6000 XP here And then after the 6000 XP, you have the solar assistant, and then from there you have the home assistant. And they basically just feed each other data. They pass the data from one system to the other, and that is how I use them. In addition to that, and probably at another week or at another time, we will also discuss a little bit more about the, what am I saying? We will also discuss a little bit more about how I've incorporated all the Victron devices in this, using the Venus system that they have, which is a Raspberry Pi version of their monitoring software. It allows me to link that directly into Home Assistant also and provide all of my Victron devices. So when we get to the Home Assistant page, you will see, let me see if I can bring that up here. Let's see. I don't remember the address for that. All right. So my Home Assistant and my Solar Assistant work together, and they are connected behind the scenes. And so the most important thing is to start with Solar Assistant and get it connected and make sure that you have everything going. So for example, I told you I went open loop with the batteries, and that allowed me to connect them directly to the Solar Assistant and pull in what their state of charge, what their independent state of charges are, how many watts are being pulled from them, what their battery high voltage and low voltage was. And this was something that I couldn't do with the standard app that comes with EG4. I could see the battery pack as a whole. This detail up here is that it was, 62%, but I couldn't see every individual battery cell, and I still can't see every cell, but at least I can see the high cell, the low cell, the average cells, basically how much is left in each of the batteries. I can see when they get wildly, the different batteries kind of drain at a little different rate and stuff, but I can see that they always kind of balance out when they get towards the top and towards the bottom. So there is 3 of them here. So I use Solar Assistant to track the batteries because this information is then going to be fed back to I am showing you the wrong screen. And this information, sorry about that. I switched softwares this week, so I'm a little out of sorts on showing you the right thing. But this is the Solar Assistant, and these from the main menu here, you can get to the batteries. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I had missed it. It has a great set of reports and things that you can look at. If we click on this one, it shows me the individual batteries and how those are all connected. I can see all the individual cells. I can see all the individual charges and all that data there. And then additionally to that, you've got the basic stats of what the current load is, what the current solar input is. Now keep in mind that this is connected directly to the 6000 XP, which is an EG4 device. The EG4 device basically is the only thing providing it here. So it doesn't include any of the content coming from the Victron device, and it doesn't, without including that, or the DIY battery, then it really doesn't have a complete picture. So you're seeing 3,100 watts of solar, but if I come over here to the EG4 and or over here to the Home Assistant, you can see not only do I have that input on these 2 items here, which is the RV coming through the 6000 XP, but I've also got the Victron information over here, and that feeds in through this input here. It's running at 102 volts and pulling in off the solar shed 1,088 watts or so. And so you can see the whole system right now is producing about 81 amps of power, of which 45 of that is making it to the into the battery. Now, Home Assistant provides me with not only automation type tools, but it also allows me to watch the power flow more closely. Today I've produced 27.58 kilowatt hours of power. Currently I'm producing 4.42. And if you'll notice, this 4.42 is considerably more than you see over here in the 3.3 kilowatt hours that are coming from Solar Assistant, because again, the Solar Assistant is specifically looking at the 6000 XP. Solar Assistant has lots of basic reports here. You can see here it shows the solar input from the 6000 XP. And if you're only running the 6000 XP, this is my go-to for if something's down or something's acting up of what's going into the 6000 XP. I come here because the home assistant is a feed from this and other feeds. So let's go in a little bit more about some of the charts that you can get to with Solar Assistant. You can see here that I've got basically a battery power chart that just outlines where the battery power is and how much is going in and out. I've got a state of charge, which shows it here. And if you wanted to see like a specific area, you could just highlight that area and it makes it bigger. And you could say, I want to see this area and I want to see. So you can zoom in and zoom out. So it's very user friendly when it comes to looking at the different aspects of what's going on with the batteries and everything connected to your solar system and how much is going in and out. The nice thing is that it also maintains a pretty decent group of historical reports. And in this case, you can see here we have an overall report. We have battery power report, which is the same as on the main two screens, the state of charge. Those all come off the main screen. But in addition to that, it also monitors the MPPT1 from the voltage from the 6000 XP along with the current and a combination of the two. It also has some data about PV power and battery current. And then, of course, there's in lots of different charts here of AC output and things. It kind of allows you to watch your system. In addition to that, it allows you to bring in the historical information about how much data you've used over a period of time. So you can see here, I've had to actually use the grid a few times this month, which doesn't make me happy, but it's happened with it being so warm. But this allows you to see, you know, I use 7.6 kilowatts of data here. I brought in 21 kilowatts of power, charged of that 7.4 made it to the battery. 4.2 was discharged from the battery before the sun came up this morning, and I've used zero grid today. So this kind of breaks that down and allows you to look back through the last 52 weeks and see how it's going then. And you can see here pretty much from, you know, early March all the way through to the last week or two, I hadn't used any solar or hadn't used any grid power. And that is about the time that the new DIY battery came in, and I went from 16 kilowatts to the 31 kilowatts that I have now. So I want to get a little bit further into this instead of just showing you what Solar Assistant can get. I want to show you some of the configurations, so we'll get to that here in a second. And then, of course, it does have some automation pieces where it allows you to turn things on and off. I've used it a little bit to turn some of the chargers on at certain times back before I got the other battery. I don't use them a lot now, but it allows you to configure times when you can set the 6000 up to, or the whatever inverter you're hooked up to. There's a huge list of inverters that it works with. And whatever you're hooked up with on those, you can control different aspects of them. So it allows you to automate different things and build automation scripts, turn the charger on at certain times. If you've got peak hours, to avoid using power in the peak hours. If you've got free electricity at night, allows you to charge all your batteries up at night. It really does a good job of allowing you to optimize your inverter's ability and to automate some of it based on real data. Configuration is pretty easy. When you get the system, you can flash it onto a flash drive. You can buy a pre-built one from Solar Assistant, and you can pretty much, this particular one is running, if I go back and look at the equipment here, it is running on an Orange Pi 3, which is a Raspberry Pi 3, as opposed to the 4s and 5s that are out now. I bought this pre-built when I first built my system, and it allows me to keep track of everything and has worked flawlessly since, so I've seen no need to upgrade it. I have configured additional ones to run with trailers and things like that, and it's as easy as just flashing a drive and putting it in a Raspberry Pi 4 or Raspberry Pi 5, and they work just fine. But the nice thing here is, in order to connect the Wi-Fi when you log in this, you'll just log into your local port you know, 192, 168, whatever your local network is. When you plug it in, you basically can configure your Wi-Fi. And then I've got both a cord plugged in and the Wi-Fi plugged in here. And then, of course, because I also pay for the remote access feature, I have an outside internet IP address assigned to me that they gateway through to my device so I can get to it, which is why I'm able to be, you know, 5 miles down the road and talking with it. In order to turn on, to configure Solar Assistant, once you get to this point and you get your Wi-Fi and your internet configured, the easiest way obviously is just plug in an Ethernet cable, configure it, and then you can go back to Wi-Fi only. Although I do suggest that you leave it connected through an Ethernet connection, because that allows for it to transmit and send all the data back and forth to the 6000 XP or whichever inverter you have. It can pull those up on, you know, coming up to every second and pull different measurements and readings. The data that you're seeing here is fed real time from those systems. In a lot of cases, when you have a lot of sun and stuff going up, it bounces up and down all day long. So I'm going to disconnect from my system here and just kind of show you how easy it is. So you have all of these different inverters. The Lux Power is the 6000 XP, but you've got Grow Watts, you've got Midnight Solars, you've got Synergies, Solaris, SRE, SunGrow, Victronic. There is just a whole slew of different inverters that are supported. And I think on the Solar Assistant website, I don't know why this thing is talking for me, Solar Assistant, there we go. The Solar Assistant website, oh, I want their real website, not mine. Huh, that's funny. Solar Assistant, this one. So often on their real website, you can actually go through and you can shop for different models and stuff like that. You can look at your sites, and once you've signed up for an account, then you can add your basic information to that and connect all your different devices and manage all your, there is a great list here also of different inverters and stuff that they support. So if you wanted to see if they support EG4s, you can go in and check those out. If you wanted to see if it supported, you know, whichever one you wanted, this is a great list. It's a great resource to figure out if they're going to support you or whatnot. And then once you have your login, you can log in here. So in my case, it was a Lux Power. You basically connect the device, and mine's connected through the internet or the network at my house. So I just connected net. I could also say USB serial if I had it directly wired up, but I don't. So I connect it there. I also told you I ran my batteries. You can, in most cases, you just say use the inverter if you're running closed loop. And then when you save this and connect, it basically connects to the inverter through your local Wi-Fi, whether that's a hardwire or whether that is whether it's a wireless. I did run wireless for quite a while and really had no problems with it. But I did notice that once I added Home Assistant and all that data was being transmitted to 2, 3, 4 systems and shifted around quite a lot, I did have to do something about it then. It ran, but it made aspects of things a little sluggish. I would see it on the Home Assistant, delayed updates on types of stuff, and packets would be bundled together and stuff. So once you have the inverter up, then you'll see you will see that all of the data starts to populate here and starts to fill in. And that literally is all the complexity there is to setting up Solar Assistant. If you wanted to connect actual batteries, then you can select the battery type that you do here. The EG4 batteries run on the Nevada RS485 protocol, and I have them connected to a USB port directly on the Solar Assistant. And once I save that and connect it here, you'll see it reconnect to the 6000 XP, and then you'll see it poll looking for all the different batteries. And once it finds the string of batteries, like right there it just did, it'll go through them all, connect to them all, and they'll all become available also under this. If you had told it to take what the inverter's batteries and state of charges was, whatever the inverters report will show up here. I have seen on some of the newer inverters and stuff, all of your battery information shows up here and it all works just fine like it does this. Unfortunately, I have Life Power 4 batteries, version 1s, and mine do not show up here. If you have the wall mount battery, the EG4 wall mount batteries and an EG4 inverter, they do show up. So a lot of that depends on the version. Additionally to that configuration, you will want to look at this is basically system information about what version you're running on, how much space you have available, what kind of USB devices are connected, and this kind of helps you go through and do a little bit of debugging and make sure that everything is running. If you run into problems, you really, once you get past the very first one, you don't need it. I opted in for the beta program, and if you opt into the beta program, you can see the latest update was on the 9th. I can go into here and it'll tell me if there's a new version out, and they come out quite frequently. They usually only release them every several, very far and few between for live people, for live, what am I trying to say? They don't release them all the time for general public. They wait for us guinea pigs to test them for you to make sure that there's no problems. But I haven't had too much trouble with it. Occasionally I'll see little glitches and they'll release another version right away. This one back here on the 18th to the 20th, that was a little bit of a problem. There's small downloads, 15 meg flash. It flashes, it resets, and everything's just fine. I haven't actually seen, and they always offer the restore back to the previous version if you're having problems. I haven't had to use any of it because it works, and when they do have a problem, it's usually minor. It comes back. I did notice on one of the versions a few versions ago, it was timing out a lot on the battery pinging, and it would take it a couple times to get connected. But you can see on this one, it connected right up now, and they've really resolved that. The next piece that you really need to know about is going to be the broker piece. And so on the broker piece, you're going to want to configure this. Now the MQTT broker is basically, think of this as a communication hub that all of your different tools can talk to. So Solar Assistant will send data over to this hub, and Home Assistant can talk and go to get that data off of that hub. There are a lot of home automation devices that you can get to talk with that broker and to send its data. And this is what allows it to link to Home Assistant. So when you get into Home Assistant, you can go into the settings down here, and I'm just going to go into devices, and you can see that I just configure excuse me, I'm going to go back here. I had to go into add-ons, and you have to configure the device to allow you to talk to that server. Now, what am I trying to say? Solar Assistant is really good about providing metadata that allows these to be added to the system pretty easily. It doesn't look like that configuration is coming up, but what I can do is I can show you. So I've got a screen that I keep that has all of the data on it when things are automatically added. And as you can see here, like I've also configured the JKBMS to be one of these devices. There's a plugin for it, and I can get into Home Assistant and get all of that information. And I configured the Lux Power inverter is taken from the Solar Assistant and dumped into the MQ through this configuration. And basically all this is you go in and configure what you need, what you want to name this, what is the name of the server, what is the unique ID of the server, what is its user ID and password, and you start this server, and then you connect the Home Assistant to connect to that same server. And I'll see if I can put out some charts. If you haven't joined the email list, that's where I usually publish additional content, and I'll see if I can put out some charts that show you how all these connect and how to configure it. And I might even make a video about it. I know I've helped a couple of people connect their Home Assistant and their Solar Assistant and get it all working. So that would probably be a really good video to release. But this is the key to connecting Home Assistant and getting all the data being fed in from all the different locations. The same thing goes true if you're interested in connecting your Victron devices to it. I use the Home Assistant connect directly to the Victron devices also through the MQ client. Now I might be able to, let me see if I can actually launch the, oh, I can, this is good. Okay, let me launch the MQ client and kind of show you how that works. Let me see if I can get that to come on just right here. Oh, yes, I will, but I am not on the local network, and I have all my MQ services configured for only local net access, so I won't be able to show that today, unfortunately. Sorry. But I'll be able to show you the result of it, so we can go through Home Assistant. And feel free, I am watching the chat. I have dual windows this week where I can see the chat, so if you do have a question, feel free to ask it, and I'll be glad to go through it. I do have about 10 or 12 that I got from online. Actually, it may be a few more than that, and I'll go through them here in a little bit also. But I want to get through the basics before I get there. So this is basically a screen on Home Assistant where it dumps all of the new devices that get configured. So when you add add-ons, whether you want to include backup devices or Groovy devices or beacon devices like or home, I use home space plugs, which basically come from Home Depot, and you just plug them in. You can turn them off and on. So you can come into one of these and you can see, like, I've got a bedroom fan plug, and I can basically turn off and on the fan at will, and you can build screens around these. So this is kind of like my evening control panel. If I want to turn on the lamps in my living room while I'm watching TV. Recently, kind of funny to say that, is in the evening I have the lights outside the RV come on, those blue lights that you see. And recently I realized that I didn't like having to go hunt down every time they came on, because I had them programmed to come on 20 minutes before sunset to turn on the lamp sitting next to me. So Home Assistant is great at building automation. So one of the automations I built for that specifically is turn on the lights for each when we are out. So this basically allows me to trigger, let's turn them off. So at 11 o'clock at night, it turns off the porch light. That way I don't need it anymore. It's too late at that point. Turn on, enable porch lights when we're out. So I have a flag that says if we're either there or not there. If we're not there, then it doesn't need to trigger any of these items. If we are there, then it triggers them. But basically I'm saying I can go in here and configure that at sunset minus 20 minutes, if the alarm is set to on, which basically I have Home Assistant just send me a message, a text message when the door alarm opens. I just put a little sensor on there. And then it will basically turn the outside lights, turn them on, and it's also going to turn on both the lamp and the wall switch that's sitting in there. So it allows for it very, very easily to go in and configure automations like that. But more importantly, it allows you to consolidate all of the information from your inverters, from your light switches, from your wall plugs. I've even been able to go in here and pull in all the different, put in a bunch of different meters where I can monitor how much hot water heater uses, how much the living room air conditioner uses, how much the bedroom air conditioner uses. It provides the hub for the automation of all these devices. Now, solar is addictive. Home automation is just addictive. So I warn you now, if you get started on this, you're going to find yourself building all kinds of different automation. The nice thing is that a lot of these devices, like the hot water heater, and this is one of those questions I get all the time, is can I automate it to only turn things on when I need it to turn things on? So I use a lot of Shelly devices to track these type of information, except on the high voltage items. I'm not real comfortable with those, but like the hot water heater, I can use the Shelly device to turn this on or turn this off with basically a switch like this, where I've got RV lights in the switch that turn on, the lights on the walls and stuff. But you can also have those be metered, where you could say, when I only have a certain amount of solar power, I'm sitting at 68% right now, whereas yesterday at this time I was at 66. So I'm 2% ahead of yesterday, which is good news, meaning I won't run out of power tonight. But it allows me to automate things like that. I can go in and build rules that say, hey, when my solar power gets over 60%, I can enable the hot water heater to run and turn that device on so that the hot water heater can automatically heat up when it needs to. And I have hot water anytime I have excessive energy. You can turn on things, fans, lights, all kinds of stuff. But the nice thing is it's all related back to the solar for me. I do it for the ability to be able to monitor how much solar I have coming in. So for example, right now I have 37 amps going into the battery. I'm creating 70 amps of power right now. Total 3,700 watts of power is being generated. And of that, 1,800 of it is going to the battery. And it's estimating that about 5% an hour will be added at its current rate of charge. And so this is very similar in nature to what Solar Assistant would show you with based on how fast it's charging. But because it didn't allow me to connect all those external devices and automate all of them and connect them all together, it wasn't near a complete of solution. Now, I will warn you that if you are looking for something that is very simple, Solar Assistant is extremely simple, but it also is fixed to what you see here is what you will get. You'll turn it on. These are the reports that you will get. These are the tabs that you will have. These were the totals in the format that you will see them. You can export this data and you can work with it that way, but you're not going to be able to build upon this much more than what you see here. In that sense, it is extremely limited to what it allows you to connect. Home Assistant extends this 100-fold. There are add-ons and plugins made for practically every automated device that I've been able to find a way to get it in here, all the way from the light switches, wall plugs, turning things on, solars, inverters, converters, basically all types of devices. But even more importantly is that it also allows you to control things like my mini splits that you'll see on the screen here. You can see those. You can see that we've got both of them turned on. Right now they've got a bug going on where the temperature that it's set to is inaccurate. It's showing 183. I'm not sure exactly what it's set to. So that's actually broken right now. There was an upgrade that came through last night that caused that. I'm sure there's a way to fix it, but you can control turning the device off. You can turn the device on. You can set the temperature. You can turn it up. You can turn it down. And as you can see, I've also got some additional thermostats or thermometers around the house that are hooked into my Home Assistant. For example, if I look at my solar one here, this is all my solar power coming in, but you'll notice here I've got one in the bay, which is where my 6000 XP is located. It gives me humidity and it gives me bay power, and based on that temperature, it can enable or disable things like the bay fans to eject some of the heat that's in there. It also allows me to control them based on humidity and say, hey, look, if it's, I live very close or right on the river here in Florida. It basically allows me to say, look, in the early spring and late fall, if the humidity is extremely high in the morning, to turn the fans off and let the inverter's heat bake out some of that humidity so I don't run into problems with humidity, so that I can control the humidity by basically automating whether or not that fan is pulling that air out or leaving it in. You can simply see the temperature of my inverters by looking here. It's 90 degrees in the bay, which is not remarkably surprising. I've also got weather sensors or weather station that you can get hooked up. I do have a weather station that I've created a video for, and it is very similar in nature to the one that CookStation here has, which is one that's located down the street from me. But CookStation is got the full service that allows me to feed it into Home Assistant, and I haven't gotten mine available yet. I'm hoping to make it available. You can still see the stats out on that video, but you can't link it in and use it for automating things yet because of the way I haven't been able to get the server properly configured to make that happen. But Cook Station gives me wind speed and temperature, allows me to configure all of that stuff and understand what's going on there, control, see UV light, see sun, solar elevations, and see all of those type of things and anticipate stuff. There are some intelligence reporting that goes on in here also, where you can go in and you can look at some of your energy windows and see like your usage today, where this shows me usage at the top. It shows me battery use down at the bottom, where the green over here shows me what the power was being used. As you can see, the green correlates over here to the green coming out of the battery, and the blue correlates to total usage. But I can go in here and see my solar panels, what they produced. So I can see from this one that during this hour between 1 and 2 p.m., the RV panels from the 6000 XP generated 3.18 kilowatt hours of energy, and the solar shed generated 0.89 kilowatts of energy for a total of 4.07 kilowatts during that hour. This is summarized by a single day, but the nice thing about Home Assistant is this allows me to go in here and say, well, I just want to see the whole month, and click a button, and now I can see this summarized by the entire day, where I used the grid. I can review how much grid I used. I can configure, I can go down here and see the solar production by day as opposed by hour, which we were looking at. I can also see the totals that this month I've produced 494 kilowatt hours. The Victron or the solar shed has produced 126 kilowatt hours of energy. Total, I've got 620 hours. I've also brought in and out of my battery 303 amp kilowatts and put in 200, or excuse me, out 289 and in 303. That's good. That means I started the month really low and I'm ahead of the schedule there. Sadly, I have 69 kilowatts of grid. Now, if I go back and look at some previous months, like let's take this month, last quarter, and we can see the entire quarter in here. It's broken up by month. We've got 2.7 megawatt hours of power that was generated, 2.3 in use, and only 69 kilowatts of energy. So this entire quarter was just this month's usage on the grid, and it was very bothersome to me. But when it gets to be that hot outside, you simply, I struggle in the deepest of winter, in the December months when there is very little sun, and I struggle in the peak of the sun year because there's also a lot of heat and humidity here. So I have to deal with that. So it's a constant battle. So the reporting on this allows you to generate any of these. So some of this comes with it. For example, this energy board comes with the Home Assistant, and it makes it very easy for you to get some of the items that they have here set up. But there are also things like this control panel here, which was totally constructed by me on what I wanted, and I moved it around. I can basically just put this in edit mode, and I can move items around. Like when I was building the new lamp one, I dropped the plug down here so I could play with it and make sure that I understood how it worked. I could turn it off and on, and then when I got it all finished and done, I moved it up here and created an appropriate switch for it and everything. So it kind of give me the core of understanding of it. The title bar up here, I can throw some of the shortcut things in. I like doing that. It's a little bit of a maintenance nightmare because I have to go back through all of my pages here and put that at the top of the page. So here I have to go in and configure each one of those. So I do a little cutting and pasting when I generate new pieces like that for Home Assistant. But it truly does provide me a level of detail that you can't get with Solar Assistant. For example, I built one here for just my JK BMS, and it monitors the basic information of what's going on here. I can see that I've got a 0.004 or 0.012. It just changed in front of our eyes. And the JK BMS is reporting at 72.36%. My low cell is 1, my high cell is 5, and then I can come down here and I can see all the different cells. One of the items that I noticed today is I do have one random cell here that's pulling out at low voltage. My suspicion is I spent the last 4 days working on a video for a DIY battery, which will release later this week, and I hope that you all watch it. I spent a tremendous amount of time on it, and my guess is I bumped some of the lead wires as I was showing how to do certain items in the DIY battery, and this one probably needs to be retorqued, so I will go back and do a complete retorquing of it and everything. But it easily outlines how it's going. I can also see from this that the low cell is pretty much fluctuates between random cells all the time, but I can see here there are large areas where cell 16 was the high cell consistently for several hours here. So it very easily allows me to identify them. And in most of these reports too, you can click on and you can get more details. You can highlight certain areas. For example, if you wanted to see 16's history, I can just click on it and I can see just the 16's history of what it's doing. I can see it had a spike here, which was probably me charging the cells and top balancing back a few days ago when I decided I had to use the grid. Let's just fill the system up and see how long we go without it. So that screen. Then I have an EG4 screen, which is basically very similar in nature, but it focuses on the pack of all 3 EG4s reports that they're at 64%. But battery 1 reports at 61.5, battery 2 at 66.1, and battery 3 at 65.6. So they all report different things, but this does show that, and they track here differently. You'll notice that the blue battery here, which is battery 1, has always been more, I call it more generous with its power. It is very generous in giving it up earlier. The cells have much lower resistance, and they just give that power up a lot easier. But at the same time, they also absorb it better. So this battery has a tendency to work a little harder than the other batteries, but at the top and the bottom of the knees, they end up being the same. It's just during the day when they're going up and down that they don't. The other 2 batteries are pretty well in line with each other. It would be interesting to take the labels on the batteries and determine where the cells, battery 2 and battery 3, if they were manufactured on the same day. I don't know if that would be the case or not, but it would be interesting to check it. I am going to keep talking, but I do want to see if I can get a couple of questions here that I had from some email questions that I had from people, and I want to see if I can figure out how I'm supposed to display these. I actually forgot, so give me just a second here, see if I can get to that. Switch over to this view for a second and just see if I can figure out how to get that email messages. There we go, email messages, and then if I sorry about this. I don't remember exactly how I got this thing to show up and work, but I do see it is here. So I am going to just give me a second and I will figure it out. And then we will be able to go through these questions. As you can see, it's waiting for me to start the what did I do? Yeah, I don't see how I did that. I may have to come back and revisit them on another day, which would be very disconcerting. I know I can get to them. I just don't remember how I did it. Let's see. It's going to be very simple when I do find it, but until then, give me just a second to see if I can find it here real quick. Okay, I found it. At least I think I found it. Well, I thought I found it. Sorry guys, it's taken me just a second to figure out how to do this, and I thought I had it up on a window, but I don't see it anywhere. Actually, I might actually have it on a window. It might be right here. And I'm very close. Give me just a second and I will have it, and we will be able to wow, that is really stupid. I remember it being stupid before, but I don't remember how I did it, to be honest with you. It's very discouraging. Sorry about that, guys. I'm working on it. Give me just another second and maybe I'll get lucky and find it. If not, we'll move on and I will skip it for now. But I am pretty sure all I have to do is figure out how to get that window open. All right, I am going to best have to take a pass on this until later. And oh, wait, that might be it. All right, I apologize, guys, for all of this and delaying everything. We'll go back to over here and we'll go back to the other screen, and I will just continue working on this, and I will have to handle those questions outside of the live stream. I apologize for that. If you're on the live stream and you have a question, I'll be glad to answer them. There's a few other items I'm going to cover, and then I will have to go back and answer those questions another day because I can't figure out how to get to them, unfortunately. And I don't want to keep you guys waiting any longer. So anybody have anything that they would like to discuss today, please let me know. And I'm going to go into a few more details about how to connect Home Assistant to Solar Assistant. And so the Home Assistant functions quite differently from Solar Assistant. Solar Assistant is a commercial product that you purchase and everything is included in it. So when you work with Solar Assistant, what you see is what you get, but there's not a lot of outside support for additional items that aren't included with it. Home Assistant comes with a variety of content that you can add. So you come down here under settings, and they've got add-ons, which are basically pieces of the system that are not part of the default system. In other words, an TTQ server is part of that, and you can configure that. You've also got tons of integration, device integrations, and stuff that you can add for approved plugins. For example, ESP Home allows me to set up Bluetooth mesh, and that way all of my Bluetooth devices that I want to talk with within my RV, outside of my RV, in the bay, in the front, in the back, underneath, they don't have to worry about talking to each other because they're all connected together and they all can broadcast from one room to the other, and makes my Bluetooth very reliable as opposed to what you're used to, it only working for a few feet. I can put a device out in the bay and have just as well a Bluetooth communication as I can one in the living room on the far end of the RV, which is really cool. But that's one of the integrations that they have. There are things like Groovy plugin, which allows you all the Groovy devices. They have tons of different thermometers, weather stations, all kinds of Groovy devices. If you've got any home automation, you've probably seen Groovy devices also. And then if you're looking at hub space, these are wall plugs that I purchased from Home Depot, and you can get them from that, and you can integrate them. You can connect to your MP server here. So I've got two connections. One is the Lux Power, and the other one is the battery that goes through and sends its data through our MQ server, which is basically just a communication server to talk all the different devices like Solar Assistant, Home Assistant, and all of them to communicate and talk. I've also got, if you look at some of the other plugins here, Raspberry Pi checker, Shelly devices, from wall plugs to lamps to lights. I've got a couple that are still in the box I haven't done, hot water heaters. And with each of these, you can track the daily usage, you can track the energy and life to date that they've used, you can track the total monthly meter, and you can set up meters. Like here, you can see I set up a couple of different meters for this one. Basically the monthly meter, weekly meter, so I can kind of see what the different kind of usage is as I begin to use these devices and understand my usage inside my RV. That's like the thing. I can look at the fans. I can turn on and off the fan, the bay fans to dissipate that heat like we talked about. I've put in a couple of different ones in the fuse box that allows me to track stations like Island Power, so I know how my espresso machines and coffee machines and those type of things. And this information doesn't seem real important unless you're living off grid on a solar system and really need to understand what usage you have. What are the big devices that you're using? You're going to want to see things like this power usage screen here, where I have what is my current intake and outtake on the far left versus what is my current use of these devices, whether that's the AC in the living room, the AC in the bedroom, the hot water heater, the bay fans, the refrigerator, or the Island Power, versus on the right-hand side, which is that total consumption for the day. Like my living room air conditioner here, where I can see that as the day goes on, yesterday, it went up all the way into 13.7 kilowatt hours on just my air conditioner. So had I not had that air conditioner running all day, I would have had an additional 13 kilowatts of power, which is amazing that it's that much. But those air conditioners do that. And then you have the bedroom one here, which is exactly the same. And mostly this is used at night while we're sleeping. So you really won't see this until late in the evening when a little bit of sun comes in one of the windows and it goes to keep it cool in there. That is what's going on there. So I did find a way here to get to a few of those questions. So I might go through a few of them, or I might just let this week come to an end if I don't have anyone online. Absolutely. Mage Matthews, absolutely, please do ask a question. I'd be glad to answer it for you. And I know there's a bit of a delay between there and here, so no problem. Take your time and let me know when you're ready. Okay, So I'm going to go back to this and wait for Mage whenever that is ready. Uh, the the important thing that I have found with Home Assistant is at first it's really nice to have all the little trinkets and the fun that you can play with turning things off and on. But then you start to learn how to use them to make your life easier and better. And that is really what I started to learn to do, is to make my life a little easier. So how do you partition the power per device? Is it per electrical outlet, sort of like a smart GFCI? And the answer is yes, it is. It is very much like a smart GFI. And basically, let me see if I can show you on the screen here. So if you go to, let's do Amazon here real quick, and you look up Shelly PM, these devices allow you to, the PM device here allows you to meter up to 16 amps on a 120 or 240 volt outlet. So it's basically limited, as you can see here on the screen, to 3,840 watts. And that is the actual device that I have for both the air conditioners in this. Now they sell additional devices that are switches, enable, disable, turn on, and turn off, in addition to the meters. But for the air conditioners, I didn't need the on and off. All I needed was the meter. And they're already $17 a piece, so I didn't spend a whole lot more on them. But they do have, like this one down here, allows you to switch 2 8-amp devices as opposed to one 16-ounce device. But there are tons of Shelly devices that you can get, and these are the ones that allow you to control switches, turn things off and on. Some of them have the ability to meter, and some of them don't. So you have to pick the device that's appropriate for your circumstance. Let's see. She says, May says, the bells and the whistles sure look like fun. If you were on assisted living, then how would this work? This is your favor. How would this work in your favor? On assisted living, it could work for a couple of different things. You can use the Home Assistant to turn up and down the air conditioner. You can use the Home Assistant to turn off and on lights. You can use the Home Assistant to turn off the coffee pot when you forget it. You can use the Home Assistant to automate the little things in life that, as you start to get older, or you start to, in assisted living where you can't get around as easily, you could simply use it to remember to do those things. I use it to turn on my porch light for me every night. I use it to turn off my porch light. But that doesn't mean that it's limited to, we're talking about using it for the, we're talking about here limiting it to the power outlets. But keep in mind, Home Assistant also works from not only feeding in solar devices, but also works feeding in cameras and monitoring devices and all kinds of Home Assistant, from lighting, turning up and down intensity, to security, to all kinds of things. So it could be very, very much helpful in the sense that you would be able to use it to control all the devices that you wouldn't have to get up and move around for. I see here that you also have a solar question. Go ahead with that one, and I'll answer that also while we're at it here. As I understand it, you need a separate controller for each different solar panel if you want to build on your solar array. Then how do you suggest building such a system? And I'm not sure if you're referring to a separate, for each different solar panel. You don't need a separate controller. You can run panels in series or in parallel independently of having a controller for each one and feed them in. So for example, in my RV, if I take you over here to the solar thing here, RV1 back, RV2 front, both have 5 panels connected in series together. Now, the solar shed, being the PV3 on the very far right, has a much more complex configuration where I have 3 sets of series panels, and each of those series of panels have 4 panels in it, and they're connected in series together, and then those 3 sets of panels are parallel together to run all at the same time through one charge controller. And now that means that it has 3,000 watts of panels hooked up to a charge controller that could only charge 2,000 watts. But because it's a solar shed and it's not getting that much power from, not getting as much power from the side panels as it would from normal panels facing directly at the sun, that doesn't affect it. So there are, and what I suspect that you're talking about here is that on a lot of home units that have restrictions from code enforcement, they do have special devices, either microinverters to convert at the solar panel from AC to, or from DC to AC, so that they can transmit that power back to the grid and be used there. Or you could also have optimizers, which allow that power to be independently determined from each solar panel and then merged together. I'm referring to the panels with different wattages for distribution. For example, solar distribution of 100 and another one at 150. Now, this is true. If you have multiple solar panels of different sizes, then you do run into this problem when you don't have similar voltage. So, for example, if you have 5 panels that are 20 volts apiece, they add up to 100 volts, and they'll be operating like the solar shed over here at 112 volts or 100 volts. If you have 3 panels that operate at 33 volts apiece, they would also be operating at 100 volts. So you can get to that point, but it is a lot more complicated and a lot more complex when you're doing it that way. It's not near as easy to use panels that aren't of similar size in strings or in parallel like that. To elaborate, not so much using different solar brands as opposed to solar panels of different sizes and voltages. How do you work around this effectively? There are a couple of different ways to work around this efficiently. I'm not sure which camera I'm on. Is it this one? Okay, thank you. I can't look at myself and do it. Sorry guys, a little bit of confusion there with the cameras. I got confused which camera I was on. So there are a couple of ways to work around this problem. Break down sine waves and how to apply such an array solar system. Break down sine waves. Are you talking about sine waves from AC power, or are you talking about sine waves from, I'm not sure exactly which version of sine waves you're talking about. Usually when someone talks about sine waves, they're talking about a pure sine wave inverter. And if you've got microinverters that are doing it, then this is not a problem because every solar panel independently provides the power back to the distribution center to be provided to the grid or for consumption. If you're talking about sine waves from the AC from like an inverter scenario, then you would be looking more at the you would be looking more at the inverter side of things, and that is past where the panels are. So on the inverter would be connected through the solar. Let me start over here. So the solar panels would be connected to the charge controller, and the charge controller would then be connected to the batteries, and the batteries would be connected to the inverter, and thus you wouldn't have to deal with the sine wave of AC voltage because all of the voltage on the charge controller side would be DC, with the exception of when you're working with microinverters. Now, when you're working with microinverters, they come in two different types. You have the microinverters that are every panel for themselves, and usually it's watt-based. So you would have a microinverter that can support up to 300 watts, a microinverter that can support up to 400 watts, a microinverter that can support up to 500 watts, but they still would allow you to independently transmit that back to the grid and allow you to use it. So microinverters change the way a home is done, and they do this because it's a little bit safer to work with that AC power than it is to have that large DC power of large strings attached to the top of a house when you have a fireman up there or something walking around, and can cause problems with that. So if I'm talking about sine waves from the inverter scenario, whereas you want to prevent the peak from tripping stuff, can you use space heaters, blow dryers, and electric TIG welders as the end of devices? Okay, I think we're mixing a few things up here. So an inverter is going to put out pure sine wave energy to make it safe for some devices, and some devices can use that dirty energy. It is always preferred to use pure sine wave energy, though. So can you run these devices? And a lot of that depends on how big these devices are. For example, in my RV, I can run my microwave, my hot water heaters, my espresso machines, and I can run multiple of them at the same time without blowing any fuses. But that requires several things in this chain of command to comply with certain standards. So for example, if my microwave needs 1500 watts, then the inverter that is supplying that power needs to supply at least 1500 watts of power, and it needs to supply enough that everything else it's providing power for can be done. In addition to that, there are items like refrigerators, freezers, and those kind of items that provide power. They use power at a consistent rate once they're running, but to start up, they have large surges. And I'll give you an example. In the coffee trailer that I have a freezer that runs at 93 watts, and it'll run for 93 watts for exactly 56 minutes. It'll shut off. The freezer will be nice and cold, and when it gets down to a certain temperature, it'll turn off or turn back on. It'll spike up. Now, the spike is where the problem comes in, because that spike on that freezer is 1280 watts. And that inverter not only has to be able to provide 1280 watts, but it has to be able to provide it in an instant, just like that when that freezer kicks on, in order to get that motor started and to get it running. Once it's running, it can run very easily at 93 watts. Now, I hope that answers the question well enough. Yes, I want to turn dirty energy into clean energy in a way that when the end devices require a peak power at the start, it won't trip stuff. It's the start surge, yes. So you need to focus on the actual inverter that you're purchasing or using for these devices. So I have a 6000 XP, which has 2 legs at 3000 watts apiece, and starting a refrigerator is absolutely no problem for that. I installed in the coffee trailer a small 2000 watt sine wave inverter that provides clean energy to that motor to run. And it was a little bit more expensive because it was pure sine wave, probably around the $350 range. And it was a 2000 watt, which I over purchased on the size of it because I wanted it to easily be able to handle that surge that came along when that refrigerator kicked on. And since then, I've had absolutely no problems. The nice thing about that is that the it also allowed for the me to turn the espresso machine on when I'm on the way to an event and get the espresso machine hot. Now, the espresso machine will dramatically decrease the charge in the battery, but it also only pulls about 1,500 amps, or 1,500 watts, I'm sorry. So that allowed me, when I turn that on, to be able to it turns on, and because it's a heating element and not this large surge, it was able to ramp right up to 1,500, and it was able to run just fine. And if the refrigerator kicks on, it has a surge capacity large enough to handle both at the same time. Yes, focus on I see your comment now. Yes, the thing is to focus on a pure sine wave inverter. And my suggestion is that you size it 30 to 40% larger peak power than you need. And let me make sure I make this really clear too. Inverters are rated in two different wattages. So there is a standard operating maximum sustained wattage, and there is a peak, what they'll call a surge wattage. The surge wattage is very rarely anywhere near represents the truth in any sort of fashion. So my suggestion is, if you find out that your device has a surge capacity of 1,200 watts, that I would make the operating wattage of the inverter, of the pure sine wave inverter, that 1,200 plus extra to cover that easily within and not be in the surge. Now, I got lucky. My 2001 can surge up to 2,500 for a split and start the refrigerator. But I would suggest that you oversize it a little bit. Power is a very fickle little thing. And there's a lot of different elements and pieces in it, and different devices work differently. So you never want to keep in mind when they put out these specs, they're talking about in the ideal circumstances, under the ideal temperature, for the ideal thing, it will surge to this amount. They're not talking about real world. So keep that in mind when you're buying an inverter. Can you post a link? Yes, I will. I will add a link to, actually, let me just see if I can post one right now for you. I can, and you're looking for the inverter that I have in the solar trailer, I'm assuming. So I will hunt that down for you real quick, and here we are. And I will post that right here for you. This is a link to the inverter that is a 2,000 watt pure sine wave inverter that I use in the food trailer. It is known to run both I used a 24 volt version. If you need a 12 volt version, they have one there, although make sure you're sizing the wires for that appropriately. 2,000 watts on 12 volts can be very tricky at times. Pure sine wave inverter, got it. A little higher than what is needed, good. And how we find the peak wattage information when purchasing. The item that you want for peak, to determine what the peak usage is what they call, it's commonly known as a kilowatt, K-I-L-O-W-A-T-T. I'm going to post a device here. Kilowatt is like Kleenex. It's the brand name that originally came out with the device. And what this device is, and let me switch my screen and show you. So what this device is these devices you plug into the wall, and then you plug your device into these devices. And when you plug it into these devices, then it will measure not only how much usage it has, but a lot of them, if you look closely at them, you will find out that they will allow you to also measure what they call the inrush, or to measure the peak usage that it had when you're doing it. Let's see if this one does it. So you just got to look through these and find them. This one here. Built-in forecast, monthly totals. There we go. Yeah, so this is kind of what you're looking for. These devices, and it's called kilowatt is the common name that I search for, but I can include a link for this one for you also in the chat so that you have it. There we go. And let's see, can you post a link? Yes, I did. Pure sine wave, got it, good there. The operating wattage is safe way to pick my inverter. Yes, that is your best bet when you're looking at an inverter. And I'll just go through a few of them here to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So when you're looking at inverters like this, the wattage that is based on in these ads are, keeping in mind, are based on the absolute best case scenario that these companies could find. So imagine you were selling one of these devices. What you would do is you would set up the perfect case scenario, and then that's what you would promote. Hey, I tried it with, in this environment, doing this, and I got 2,000 watts. That doesn't mean that it's going to work with every device that needs 2,000 watts. That means at the ideal temperature, in the ideal environment, with the ideal size extension cords, the ideal source, the ideal battery, the ideal world, and the ideal life, and on when the moon was just right in the atmosphere, it works, and that's how they test it. So unless you have the exact specs they use to test it, take all of this information that comes on these advertisements as with a grain of salt, and leave yourself a buffer, because what you'll do is you'll come up very disappointed. And I can tell you, looking at this one right here, this one right here is one that we used just a few weeks ago. Actually, no, that's not the one. This is the one I originally put in the food trailer. It was a 1,000-watt inverter. I went to their 2,000-watt inverter because my surge was 974 watts. And it left me with, even if I had the lights on, it wouldn't surge past 1,000. So that's when I went to the 2,000 version, because the motor startup is the hardest on it. Now, it does say that it surges a little bit more than what this is. So this says 1,000 watts, 2,000 watt surge, as you can see down there in the right-hand corner. Don't trust those. They're very, very rarely do those actually represent what the true surge is. And most of the time it is around 10% of the power, meaning this one can probably surge closer to 1,100 or 1,200 watts than it can 2,000. There are some inverters from some companies, especially in the solar industry, that are much more legitimate in their advertising with this. But for the most part, all the numbers that you see for things like this are garbage. They don't mean anything. Trust the normal operating wattage more than anything, and even with that, leave yourself a 15, 20, 30% buffer. And in my case, I'll usually leave a 40 or 50% buffer just to be sure that I can handle the surge with the normal wattage plus a bit of a buffer on top of it. Hopefully that answered the question for you, Mage, and you got what you needed out of that. But and I know we've gone completely off the rails when it comes to Home Assistant and Solar Assistant, but that's okay. I'm glad that you had the questions, and I'd be glad to answer any more if you've got them, and make sure we take care of it. I mean, that's what this is all about, is communicating, and I look forward to answering the questions. It's probably one of my most favorite parts of running the YouTube channel, in addition to all the cool stuff I get to build and show you how I built, but is answering the questions afterwards. I get a giggle out of it sometimes when I read some of the comments, and for days they entertain me. So that was inverters, and I think I posted the links for you. I hope I posted the links for you. And so we're going to go back a little bit here to Home Assistant, and I'm going to show you some of the the detailed history reports and detailed things that they have. These things you're not going to use as much, but it does allow you to review what is going on with the system and to kind of monitor what's going on. So quite frequently when you first get into Home Assistant, you'll build automations and you'll say that the automations don't work. So I want to go through the automations just a little bit and kind of show you how I test some of them, because this aspect of Home Assistant is probably one of those that's the most confusing part. So for example, I have one here for, these are basically just relay switches for the refrigerator's open or the door's open. And when the fridge opens or the door's open, you can see here there's a log of when this happened. Now, refrigerator open doesn't mean that it just opened. I set these alerts up based on certain triggers. So here I say, if the refrigerator door is open for a duration of 2 minutes or more, that it's going to, what is it going to do? Well, it's going to trigger a notification sent to me to say, hey, the refrigerator door is open. And the funny part about this is normally I wouldn't need to do this because refrigerators usually have a little alarm system, and most of you have probably heard them. You leave the refrigerator door open, you walk off and you hear a dee 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 in the background or some annoying noise that gets you. For some reason, my ears can't hear this one. My wife makes fun of me all the time. She says, the refrigerator's binging, won't you close it? And I'm like, I don't even hear it. So it's one of those, you get to certain people have certain deafness to certain things. And in this case, I don't hear the refrigerator. So I changed it to send me a message on my phone through automation that says, hey, if I leave it open and it's been open for 2 minutes, to go ahead and send me a notification. The nice thing about Home Assistant, and this was the part that I wanted to get to, was that it provides you with a trace log of what's happened and how it got to that conclusion when it ran. So you can go into the trace timeline. You can say this was triggered, this sensor, at 12:09 p.m. on the 22nd, which would have been this afternoon, and notification sent a notification. And so you can go in here and look at what's going on with each one of these, and you can look at the log entries. You can see when they happened. You can check all the configurations of what you've got. You can modify, and there is a ton of help out on the internet for Home Assistant. And I mean from scripts to forms to people to all kinds of stuff. The support engine that is related around Home Assistant is 13 miles deep, and you can find 100 different solutions and suggestions for things and the way you want to do things. But the nice part about this is that it allows you to see what happens when this is triggered, but it also allows you to do things like run these actions now so that you don't have to try to trigger the message. I could just say, hey, I want you to run this action now. And when it does that, then it's going to send me a message saying that the refrigerator door is open, even though technically the refrigerator door is not open. But it easily allowed me to go in and push the button on the trigger, and it was able to tell me what happened, what variables changed that caused it to happen, and then what it did when it was triggered to do that. And it's saying 27 seconds ago now is showing that it triggered this, and that's because I manually told it to execute it. But this is one of the most powerful features about the home automation that we have when it comes to Solar Assistant and Home Assistant being connected, because now you truly do have control over the devices that you have in your solar system to turn things on, to turn things off, to test these automations. Simple things like turning on well pumps, turning off well pumps. A majority of the people that are dealing with solar are out in farther out areas, and they're dealing with things like they want to pump water from a deep well into a reservoir. But you don't want to do that just any time because you simply don't have the electricity to do it. But with something like a Home Assistant, you could actually trigger a relay that turns on a 240 volt switch that allows the well pump to run until such time that you've deemed through that set of triggers and rules that say, I no longer have enough power to do this, or the sensor for where you're pumping the water says that it's full and that you have all the water that you need and to stop. So these are the type of things that this can be used for, in addition to the cool little things like turning on porch lights and lamp lights at night. And, oh, I forgot when I went to bed, it shuts all the lights off for me. I mean, how many times did I know my father, rest his soul, was key on, you left the lights on last night. Please make sure before you come to bed next time you turn them off. How many times did we hear that? Well, he would never, ever complain about me doing it again, because at midnight, I've got a rule. It just goes through the house and shuts off all the lights. And so I don't have to worry about it anymore. That makes it pretty easy for me. And that's why I like Home Assistant. And that's why it allows me to get into some of these details and turn on some of these devices, my hot water heaters, my lights, and turn them off at night, and to control some of this usage without me truly being having to monitor it myself and keep up with it. If you get into the devices that are natively supported with Home Assistant, you will find them here in devices and services, and you can look for integrations from practically every part of the world. There is something that is going to be supported from within this. Now, these are those that have gone through the prior stringent testing. And you can link things like practically every solar system out there. Now, in my case, I wanted to link the Solar Assistant, I wanted the 6000 XP, I wanted the Venus Orion, the Venus for the Victron devices, I wanted the Solar Shed, I wanted all of these different things linked together, and that's what the Home Assistant allowed me to do. Now, I will tell you, when I originally built the solar system that was in the food trailer for the coffee shop, I linked the Home Assistant that was located in that trailer to this one, and allowed me to monitor and track both of them, because in that one I had a whole other set of equipment and it was in a completely different location, and so it allowed me to pull some of that content and some of that data in. But it's amazing the integrations that have gone into the work that goes here. So a lot of the companies, if you have different types of devices and stuff, tons and tons of companies have incorporated devices and gone out and gone through the stringent testing to get them on this integration list that's here. And I would be glad to look up any of them if somebody has something that they want. You know, I don't know if let's say Train air conditioners. Wow, I can't spell today, can I? Train. So, no Train, but Rainforest Automation, Rain Machines, tons and tons of companies here. But what's really particularly cool about Home Assistant is you're not limited to those that have gone through the stringent testing and the backfeeding and the making sure that everything's perfect. There's also this developer environment out there, this group of folks that just like to build stuff. And I'll raise my hand on that one. But the nice thing about it is they have what they call the Hack Studio. And the Hack Studio is not going to show up for us today. I'm going to see if I can reload the page and get it to show up. The Hack Studio, it did, great. So the Hack Studio allows you to integrate devices that are in development or that are built by individuals that have never gone through any of that stringent testing. And obviously they come with a certain amount of risk, and they come with a certain amount of things you have to be careful of. But things like my hourly, the home space plugs that come from Home Depot came out, and when they came out, they didn't have a plug-in, but somebody built one for it. The air conditioners, the mini splits that I have, the local Tuya devices. This is a Chinese manufacturer that sells the devices to 100 different places. They all have their own independent applications. They all have their own independent this, and they all require you to log into certain places. But this allowed me to connect to those devices directly and communicate with them outside of that world, that ecosystem that they built. There's things like the power card. So power card is a cool one because in addition to the default one, which I showed you here, which shows the, and I can go in here and pull up the current date, let's say here. Oops, what did I just change that to? June 22nd. Please stay on today, thank you. Okay, so this is today's statistics, and we saw this. And this is default that comes with Home Assistant. It's very easy to operate. You don't really have to do a whole lot of configuration for it. There is some configuration if you go to the energy channel. You come in here, you configure the source of where your grid comes in. If you're backfeeding to the grid, you can add a meter or a CT scans that go out there. A lot of the times on the grid one though, it's a net in or a net out that's counting. So you can configure the grid. You can configure the solar panels. I've got 2 inputs for this one, but only did this work because I was able to incorporate the Victron device in the background on one side, and then I was able to incorporate the solar assistant on the other side that contained the 6000 XP and communicated with it. So this brought them all together to give me all of the solar power of all of those devices. Then I have a battery, home battery storage device. Now this one, I use the Victron shunt, and I linked in the Victron shunt here because the shunt itself allows me, and if I go over to Victron devices, and I can show you that, if I come up here, whoops, where am I going? And I go over to the Victron devices, you can see this is my, has all my Victron information in it, my solar shed input for every single day. It shows each of the day's stats of what went in and out. But in addition to that, I've also got all of the Victron battery state of charge in here. And if I go to my little test page, which you're familiar with from earlier, we could scroll down here and find the sensors that go to the Victron devices. Let's see, where are they hidden? Here they are. So here are all the Victron sensors, which include the total DC image, the power, the outage, the energy, the amps in, the amps out, and everything that Victron reports from their VRM, I think it is. Let's just go take a look at that real quick. So Victron VRM, I'm just going to log in here real quick. Click on this and get myself logged in, and then I'll come right back and show you guys. It's looking for my face. There it goes. All right, I had to rearrange the. All right, now I can go back to this and show you the VRM. So from within the VRM, all of this data, because I'm linked into pulling this information from the installation devices here, where I have the gateway being, this is the generic Venus system, which runs on a Raspberry Pi 5. And this device allows me to connect directly to Home Assistant and provide all of the data through through the same server that we use over here for the MQTT broker here. I provide that same data from that Victron device over to that same server, and it takes all the charge controllers, and you got to, this one is no longer being used because it's in the trailer, and when it's close by it actually shows up. But this would be my charge controller, and it shows all of the charge controller content. It shows all the battery from the smart shunt, and any other devices that I have hooked up through Victron will go through this and provide that backfeed data. And unfortunately, I can't show you the MQTT server, but I will create a video at some point here in the next couple of months that specifically shows you how to take the solar assistant, connect it to that server, configure that server, connect the home assistant to that server, and connect the Victron to it so that you can get all of that data in one place. It's quite an involved process, but once it's working, it's well worth it. As you can see, you get all of this content in one place. You can automate and do practically anything you want. But all this data then feeds in through these sensors. And through these sensors, the nice thing about Home Assistant is that you can go in here and you can pull up any of these numbers and see a history of what was going on with that statistic. You can look back of whatever history you've got configured. In my case, I think I have it configured to 10 days. So I'm going to pull a little bit more than 10 days so I can confirm that. But you can see here, this shows that whatever device I pulled up, Victron negative 21 days. So this is a roaming day. So this is basically the history of the last 21 days on the 21 days. But you can do this with every sensor and every device within your Home Assistant. So if I wanted to see what the power consumption is here on this island, I can click on it and I can open this up and I can pull up a chart for the exact usage for probably 10 days. And sometimes it summarizes the information once it's past 10 days and you can still see it, but you just can't get to the level of detail that you could for that first 10 days. And it seems like right now it's having problems getting to data at all. I'm going to hit refresh here and see if it reconnects and tries again. But while this loads, what the important aspect here is to remember is that you have access to this data. And you can see here after 10 days, the detail level that we have in this area here for this 10 days is gone. But it does summarize this information. It looks like by hour. And it does keep that information so that you can continue to report on it. But the cool part is that you can use this information for historical evaluations. You can build smart tools to determine where is your solar power now, what do you anticipate it's going to be, and there are all kinds of plugins to do exactly that, to anticipate how much power you will end up having based on weather patterns connected to this and that. And the Home Assistant really expands on the AI ability of managing your solar system. And in my mind, it is what has given me the insights to understand truly the data that I have and how I can use that data smarter, and not necessarily from a, and as any of you that have watched my videos know, that I'm not particularly about consumption or about conserving energy. I'm about producing my own energy and not being reliant on the grid, having the freedom to do what I want with my energy and not to be dependent on fossil fuels and those type of things. So for me, it isn't really about how do I conserve as much as possible. If I need more energy, my answer is I need more solar panels or I need more batteries. That's my answer, because that gives me the freedom to do as I want without affecting all these other elements. And Home Assistant, connect it with Solar Assistant, connect it with my inverter, provide me that ability to analyze historically, currently, any element that I link into it automatically from a historical perspective to a at the moment perspective. Or, for example, this is that Flow plugin, and to get plugins that can create just spectacular different views of your data. For example, when I first started with Home Assistant, I was playing with someone was convincing me that Home Assistant was a good idea, and I wasn't convinced. I was, why am I going to go through all of that? I have all the data I need, and so on and so forth. And one of the items that they said is that, well, we can make you the card, and they showed me this card here, this little energy distribution card. And I'm like, well, that's great, but you know, that really doesn't look like the Victron card. Now, if we go look at the Victron, the simple one they have here on this screen, and you look at some of the devices that Victron has, some of those, let's look at some of the Victron screen, monitor screen. If we look at some of the Victron monitoring screens like this one here, where they link all this data in and they show you what your loads are and what your, what's going on with all of them. This is what I was expecting when they said I could do it with Solar Assistant. Now, the cool part is that can be built with Home Assistant now. And so I went from, they were showing me this to, well, how do I get all the other feeds? And I custom took that plug-in and I custom built, flipping through my screens here, got lost. I custom built or custom added on to that plugin to build this. And so you can see here, this shows total input for the day of 31.22 kilowatt hours of energy. Total coming in right now is 1.5 kilowatts. But it also shows me the total RV usage of 19.53, and it shows me the total that has gone out to the battery is down. The battery is, actually the battery is on another screen because I didn't have a way to display it here. I was out of things because I wanted to actually see what the wattage was and not necessarily the total. So I put the state of charge there instead. But I can see the battery input on another screen. But this shows me the total wattage being used by the 6000 XP or the inverter in this case. And then from there, I calculate what is the DC power that you didn't account for. If I create 1.347 or however many watts that is, and it's feeding this in, and this much is going to the battery, and this much is being used, everything left was consumption. And that allowed me to build a consumption chart here that I can now go in, and as I did with the other one, I can click on this chart and I can see what the wattage of the input is. I can also look at what is the consumption of all of these, and what was the triggers behind them, and how did I get to this data, and what is this data. So this is what is, I think I just slowed that thing down to a point. It's looking at all that historical data. But this is why I have a fondness for Solar Assistant and Home Assistant, because every time I have looked out to build something that allows me to expand my system or get smarter with the way I use the energy I do have, not necessarily curtail how I use it, but be smarter of how I use it. And being smarter, in essence, creates more for me. It's one extra way of creating more. I don't want to limit my lifestyle. I don't want to tell my wife that you can't run the air conditioner at 63 degrees at night because that's as low as the machine will allow it to go. I don't want to have to tell her that she can't do that. But I do want to be able to go over here in this chart and say, okay, if that's what I've done, what is the usage of doing that last night? And how did that affect me? So I can see from this, I used 4.2 kilowatts yesterday, generating, making it 62 degrees in our bedroom while we slept. And then I can also go in and say, show me that for the last week at just a moment's notice, and know that 8 kilowatts seems to be the peak, and 6 seems to be the normal, and anything less than that, being 4 for yesterday, seems to be a rare exception. And a rare exception is because we were up late and the air conditioner didn't start till late, so we don't have the 10 or 11 o'clock massive usage. All that massive usage went over here into this day. And we don't have tonight's on this stage yet. So this is why it's really train I see your comment. Let me see if it shows up. Train. Did I misspell it? Oh, I did. That's probably what it was. I am a horrible speller, by the way, and anyone who's watched any of my videos, I'm sorry for the spelling. But let's go back to the plugins because I'm being told that I misspelled it. So we're going to go back over here and we're going to click on this and we're going to look for T-R-A-N-E. And the answer is still no. But that doesn't mean that it's not here. That just means that it's not in the approved list. The interesting thing is some of these hacks, and they call it hacks fondly, I think. I don't see anything there either. But there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of plugins, add-ons, and there is a key difference here that you probably should be made aware of if you're going to get into Home Assistant or doing this, is that the devices and services, services are part of the Home Assistant where they're augmenting the functionality of the actual application itself, meaning they're adding calculations to numbers that they have, or they're adding in a way to extract data from a particular device or whatever. So it's core functionality that's being added onto it. But you'll notice there's also this add-ons tag down here. Oh, and the add-ons is working now. And add-ons is actually separate apps that integrate with the Home Assistant to perform things outside of its normal functionality. For example, and this is actually a very good example here, which is probably why I was coming to the screen in the first place. The Batmon is an add-on whose sole purpose is to connect through the JK-BMS Bluetooth and extract all the data and fields and information that's necessary. So if we go into this, you can see here, they talk about connecting to the daily BMS, but there are tons of JK-BMS, the daily BMS, the JBD BMS, the ANT BMS, these, and the SOK BMS, and even Victron. This will ping those devices and connect to them and extract the information from them. This connects directly to the Victron Smart Shunt. Unfortunately, it doesn't connect to all the charge controllers and all the other devices. But I do have, and I will post, probably create you a video for this over the next month also. I do have an ESP32 connection. And as you know, ESP32 was one of the plugins that allows it to wirelessly communicate with the Home Assistant and provide statistical information. This allows the Victron, if you only have a charge controller, this will allow a charge converter to broadcast its information wirelessly through your home network directly to Home Assistant and incorporate all the information. The Batmon add-on that we have here is basically taking the Bluetooth broadcast messages and picking them up. And if you look under the configuration here, I basically say this address on the network is a JK type BMS. I want you to name it JK1, and I want you to use the Bay Fans adapter, which is an ESP32 Bluetooth extender from the hash network that we talked about earlier. That it uses that device to specifically talk to the JK BMS and pull it off. I am not totally, I started playing with this option back a week or so ago, and I am not convinced yet that it's actually exclusively using that device. I think it takes that perimeter and starts to use it and then gets sidetracked, and I think they have a bug in it. But either way, it allows you to configure how often it's sampled, how often you're going to ping it. It's sampled every 10 seconds. It's published to the MTTQ server every 15 seconds. The values expire over 54,600 seconds. And basically, it also creates logs. It allows you to recycle the Bluetooth if you have problems and stuff like that. But if we go over here to the logs, you'll see that it is just pinging over and over and over, getting a sample from this Bluetooth device. And when it gets those voltages like it did here, it transmits, and you can see here, it's got the battery pack size, it's got how many amps are being pulled, it's got some debugging information. You scroll back up here to this. It's got all of the cell voltages, it's got the temperature gauges, it's got all that information, and it transmits that stuff into Home Assistant and makes all those sensors that we talked about earlier show up so that you can view all of that content and data in the different screens like we showed down here. Whoops, over here. So they all show up here under the battery is right here. So the Matt RV BAT1, which is JK1, and if you remember, that was the alias name, and it allows us to turn off balancing from here, to charge, to change if it can charge, if it can discharge, if the balance switch is on, if the I can turn off the balance switch. It allows me to see all the cell voltages in detail here. But I use this to build the screen that you saw over here, all those sensors, to turn these all into gauges. And this is very, very simple stuff. So for example, and I'll give you an idea of how simple it is. So if you wanted to build a sensor, you could come in here and you could say, look, I want a gauge, and I want this gauge to talk about my Victron. Let's see if I got state of charge in here. I do. I have Victron battery state of charge. So there, now you can see I have state of charge shown there. But I can also say, look, I want the minimum of this to be 0, and the max is obviously going to be 100%. And I want it to have some color interactions. Oops, I am not showing you the right screen. And I want to, so I'm configuring the sensor, and I'm sorry, I don't know how long it has been like this. Hopefully not for very long. But you can go in and you can configure this card, and I'll go back here, and you just basically go into edit mode, and you, when you go into edit mode, and I'm just going to cancel out and go right back in and just show you here. So you can go to any screen, and when you want to go in and you want to edit and create a sensor or something, you can just click the edit button. You can just click a plus button where you want to add a sensor. And in my case, I want to scroll down. I find the gauge is what I want. From the gauge, I want the state of charge. You just hunt for I can either grab the state of charge for the JK battery, which is that one, or I can grab the state of charge, which is from the Victron battery, which is here. I could probably also find the state of charges for all three of the EG4 batteries, or the state of charge for all three of them combined, because they're reporting over the same connection. They also report the combined status there. So if I pick the state of charge for the Victron, it's here. I can set the min and the max to look like this. I can go in and say, hey, look, I want to set severity. So if I do something like this, I can say, okay, look, green starts at, let's say, over 71%, and yellow starts at 50%. And that would allow the chart to say, okay, when my battery goes below 71%, it's going to be it'll be green above 71%, it'll be yellow from 50 to 71, it'll be red below it. And you can also change the way they work, the way they pop up and the way they show up. So I can come over here to visible and say, only show this if in certain cases. You can also configure the size and the layout of it. What I wanted to do is show you how to configure the different types of gauge. There we go. Nope, that's the wrong one. I think it's this one. So I turn green to over 80. yellow over 50. And so now the gauge is going to show the whole gauge is yellow when it's between 50 and 80, as opposed to showing it like this, where it shows you the gauge relative to where you are. But if you're looking for something that has pizzazz when you look at it and it sets off an alarm, you could do it this way and it easily tells it. But you've also got where you can turn on the gauge showing on the screen and all kinds of stuff. So there's tons and tons of configurations for each of these that allows you to do it. Like here, I've got the cell delta showing up on this one. And if I was to edit this, you can see that I've got this configured to say, look, between 0 and 0.5, which is 0.05, I mean. And then I've got the different colors here. So it would show me if my delta got out of control or whatnot. So this is the basics of how you can use Solar Assistant, Home Assistant together, how they work together to provide you with what you need to automate devices, to set things up, and to configure them very, very, it's very cool in nature that you can combine it with other automation devices, thermostats, and there's thermostats for your house, and you can change the temperature of your house. There are thermostats where you can just see the temperature. You can connect it to weather stations and get rain things. You can turn the sprinklers on based on the fact that it hasn't rained in a week. You can turn them off and tell it not to run at all based on that. There are tons of endless ways to configure it, and they give you all the tools that you need to basically set up the screens that you want to see. When I first got involved, I started with this screen here, building it here. Now, I hardly look at this screen anymore unless I have key information that I'm really looking for and I want to see that came from this, like my charge rate is primarily on this one. Then I got into, well, I want to see what all my solar panels are doing. And so I built this screen here to understand the solar panels and what it was going on. When I started working on the solar shed, I wanted to see what the Victron history was. And so you'll see I had all of these days ago reports and stuff and several of my videos where I was showing the different performance from different days. And then recently I got into what is the production every day and how much are we actually producing. As you can see why I claim 7 kilowatt hours a day in energy from the solar shed, because the majority of the time here I do hit 7 kilowatt hours. And then this also allowed me to do the measurements for back a few weeks, back last week, whatever it was that I released the videos that talked about down here where we only did the vertical panels and how those vertical panels work and what was the production from that, and showing that they are actually, approximately 50% of the production that comes off of the solar shed was just amazing to me. Now, there are 2,000 watts of solar panels mounted vertically and 1,000 watts mounted on the roof. So it's 50% of the overall power, but they're actually only producing 25% as much energy. But that doesn't change the fact that the consensus is that those panels are producing nothing and that they were a waste of my time and they're a waste of money, and we've proven that to be completely wrong. So as you can see, that additional 3 kilowatts a day was the difference in almost a whole battery in charging for me. So then we go into, I went from that screen to I built some power flow screens, and I took that into a battery screen to understand all the batteries. When I started building the JK battery, the DIY battery, I wanted to understand how is the distribution between, I've got 23 kilowatts coming in, I'm using 26 kilowatts, what batteries are providing power? And as you can see here, right now, the EG4 batteries are being lazy and doing nothing because they are very generous. They're very generous at the very beginning of the morning, and as they give away all that power, and when the evening starts to come along, they're no longer generous with it, and they basically start to short it out. So all of these different screens and stuff that I built were built because I had a specific need or a specific challenge that I was facing and something that I wanted to build to make it work for a specific case. And I know I've gone on for quite a while, and I just realized that I've reached 2 hours. It seems like 20 minutes to me. So I do want to ask if there are any other final questions out there from anyone. I do probably need to wrap this up, and I have said it before. I will say it again. I can sit here and I can talk about the solar system all day, every day. I do want to let everyone know, again, I did mention at the beginning of the thing, I have started taking consultations. There is a link in the description below if you're interested in getting some time to review plans you have to set up a solar system, just need some personal advice, want some assurance that you're on the right track and you're not going to burn your house down. I'll be glad to take a look at those and take those. There are limited schedules available, so I would hope that you do it. I've also include a lot of links now for affiliate programs from Solar Assistant with special deals and things that they've got going on. I probably should go over there really quickly, go over the specials that they have going on this week, because they've got some permanent markdown in prices, and you'll find a link to Solar Signature Solar in the links below. But some of these are just astounding. Their lithium batteries are marked down hundreds of dollars each. They've got their wall mount batteries went down hundreds. As the tariffs start to get sorted out, we're starting to see the prices here drop in a lot of the items that are coming from China. In addition to that, EG4 is one of the few companies that has started manufacturing here in the US. So we want to make sure we provide our support for them for manufacturing in the US, and hopefully that will help counter some of the stuff going on. But some of the off-grid, if you're looking at a 120 volt inverter and you want one that is solid as a rock, this EG4 3 kilowatt off-grid inverter being marked down $350 to $699 is a fantastic inverter. It outperforms every 3,000 watt inverter I think I've ever seen. The only one that even comes close to competing with it are going to be some of the Victron devices, and the price is not going to be even close to comparable. The Flex Boss was marked down. The Grid Boss was marked down. Lots of other prices have dropped. They're all here. I'll scroll through them all so that you can see them. And if you're interested in a solar mini split, all of the solar mini splits dropped hundreds and hundreds of dollars. You can see them here in the middle. They've got the hybrid ones, which use both AC, DC power. In other words, they've got special panels set up just to run those mini splits. And if you don't have enough power there, then they switch over and they use AC power. So I will go back up to the top here and just kind of scroll down through this for you guys that are interested. There are links below to Signature Solar, all of my videos, pretty much my 6000 XP video that I released, the Chargeverter video that I released, the ones that I'm going to come out with later on next week, probably for the EG4 batteries will be in here also, and all of these prices will take. In addition to that, they announced a special of any order over $2,500 gets flat rate shipping for only $150. So if you're interested in the flat rate shipping, follow the link below. Place your orders here. It does not pertain to solar panels. I want to give you a heads up right off the bat. It doesn't count for solar panels. I'm sorry. But if you're ordering any other thing, including some of their kits, it does count for all of those. Anyway, it has been a fantastic week. I would like to celebrate with all of you again. I would love to work with any of you that are interested, and I'm going to celebrate my 6,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the feedback, and thank you so much for everything that you do. It means so much to me, and I am thoroughly honored by your participation and you being here. Thank you, and have a great week, and we will see you next Sunday when we do Solar Talk on Sunday then too. Thanks a lot.